The Holy Gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ according to Mark. Glory to you, Lord Christ. The apostles gathered around Jesus and reported to him all that they had done and taught. He said to them, "Come away by yourselves to a remote place and rest for a while." For many people were coming and going, and they did not even have time to eat. So they went away in the boat by themselves to a remote place. But many saw them leaving and recognized them, and they ran on foot from all the towns and arrived ahead of them. When he went ashore, he saw a large crowd and had compassion on them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. Then he began to teach them many things. When it grew late, his disciples approached him and said, "This place is deserted and it's already late. Send them away so that they can go into the surrounding countryside and villages to buy themselves something to eat." "You give them something to eat," he responded. They said to him, "Should we go and buy 200 denarii worth of bread and give them something to eat?" He asked them, "How many loaves do you have? Go and see." When they found out, they said, 5 and 2 fish. Then he instructed them to have all the people sit down in groups on the green grass. So they sat down in groups of hundreds and fifties. He took the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, and looking up to heaven, he blessed and broke the loaves. He kept giving them to his disciples to set before the people. He also divided the 2 fish among them all. Everyone ate and was satisfied. They picked up 12 baskets full of pieces of bread and fish. Now, those who had eaten the loaves were 5,000 men. The gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, Lord Christ.
All right, well, good morning again. We get past the speaker there. Oh man, what a week it has been. It's been incredible. On Monday, Kelsey and I celebrated 7 years of marriage. So in Costa Rica, we were able to celebrate, and before we got to Monday, we found ourselves 8 days ago, early on a Saturday morning, 5 a.m. at the Charleston airport with 20 people, 11 students, 9 adults, making our way to Costa Rica. We connected through Charlotte, and as we boarded the plane in Charlotte, we were kind of sitting there for a little while, and we were like, when is this going to happen? We're ready to get there. We're ready to make this. We're ready to get this flight over with, and all of a sudden on the comms, the pilot comes over and says, "Hey, the crew is working on the engine. Don't worry. Give us 20 minutes, 15, 20 minutes. We're going to be in the air shortly, taking you to your destination, getting you to where you want to be. Just give us 15, 20. I'll be back." Well, then he comes back on the comms in about 15 or 20 minutes, and he says, "All right, everybody, pack up all your stuff. Move swiftly, move quickly. The mechanics have said our engine is not ready to fly us, and so they need to do some more work. They need to find some more stuff out. So get all your stuff, get off the plane, stay in the terminal, and we will find you a new flight." And not 20 seconds later, he comes back on and says, "Stop. Everybody stop where you are. Stop what you're doing. Don't move. Stay put." So now we're like, okay, what's happening? You have some people who don't mind flying. You have some people who are very scared to fly, and it's like, what is happening? Well, then in about a minute and a half, he comes back on board and says, "Hey, put everything back. The mechanics say the engines are fine. It's just a small oil leak, but it's good to go. So buckle up, make sure your seatbelts are tight, and we'll be on the way to Costa Rica in about 2 minutes." And that's how our trip started to Costa Rica. And we made it. We made it there. A little late, but we made it. And we weren't sure if we were. So there were a lot of prayers being sent up by everyone on that flight, especially our crew. But the missions trip was awesome. I mean, we had a good time again. We had 11 students, 9 adults, and you'll see a team picture up here on the screen. And I could go through and I could point at each and every student, each and every leader and say, man, this is what I saw in them. This is how I saw God move. This is how I saw them work. This is how. I mean, there was one day where we worked from, it was 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. after being there for 4 days already. And the kids never grumbled. The kids never, they were there to serve. And it was beautiful to see. And our adults did such a good job leading our kids and leading the community. So give this team a hand clap. And so what our mission trip looks like is we're there for 6 days. The first day you get there, you get settled. There's a youth event that night, and you get to go ahead and start making relationships with the teenagers in the community. The next day, you have church service, and it's different from church service here, and it's awesome, and it's in a different language, and you're like, what is happening? But it's beautiful. Sunday evening, you spend time with Pastor. You get to hear his story, his wife's story, how they see God moving in their community, in their church. And then the work starts Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. You do a little bit in the morning, you do a little in the evening, and the days just go on. And so the next picture you see is from a morning where we did food delivery. And so we pack bags. It takes, I think, $30 to pack a bag that will provide enough groceries for the month for a person in Costa Rica. And it's an incredible opportunity where we packed 20 bags delivered to 20 families, and they had the opportunity. They go to these homes, they go and speak with the people first. They don't even bring the food out to the very end because it's about the people. It's about the relationships. And then through that, it's, hey, we also want you to know that God sees you. Here's you a little food. Here's you a little something to keep you going. And I can't remember if it was this family or if it was another family where they make, I think, $300 a month, and they do that to help feed and serve the community. So this food goes a long way for them, and I'm sure hearing their story, they'll just give it away too. But the food delivery is an awesome ministry. The next picture you'll see is a picture from VBS. We did VBS each afternoon, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and we have an opportunity to talk about Jesus, to share different stories. Our students lead it all, from the dancing, which there was a lot of dancing, there was a lot of singing, there was a lot of karaoke on this trip, a lot of fun, but they get to lead these kids. We had over 35 kids from the community each day at VBS, and it was just a beautiful opportunity to see our students engage, to struggle through some language barriers, but to show these kids love and to say, hey, you matter. We're here because you matter, and we want to serve and to teach you about Jesus. And then we had construction projects. And what's interesting about the construction projects is each year they've really aligned with kind of what we're doing as a church. And so one of the construction projects that they were doing is we were, for 3 days, for 6-7 hours a day, just taking a sledgehammer and beating a concrete wall. We were taking a concrete wall down from behind, in the back of their sanctuary, so that they can make more room for more people to hear about Jesus. And what are we doing at our church? We're taking a couple rooms out in the back so that we can make more room for more people to know about Jesus. And so it's beautiful to see how God this isn't just a random place we're going to serve. This is a place that God has gone before us and prepared the way. And so it's beautiful to see how we're able to serve. Another project you can see here, this is a picture from last year. This is their kitchen. And if you notice the roof, it's open. It is what it is. There's 2 fans in there, and it was great. You know, you're in Costa Rica. This is awesome. But they want to do Magali, who is the pastor's wife. Her ministry is to cook and to feed. She loves to be in the kitchen. She loves to serve people in that way. And so she had a vision for how she wants this place to look and to feel so that when people go in, again, they know that they matter just by the scene that they're in, just by the room, how the room feels. So she really wanted to upgrade this kitchen for the sake of the people. So the next slide, you can see we had a team work from Again, 8 a.m. to I think 7 p.m. with a little lunch break, finishing and working this ceiling. And so the difference, you can see the white up top, they have, instead of just 2 lights, they have, I think, 7 lights. They're going to put 6 fans up. There's no AC in there. And so they're going to have 6 fans. It looks way more beautiful, and it's going to be able to serve more and more people, because another project we did, and another where a group was working, was this used to be kitchen and storage, because there's no space. They're just big center block open buildings. And we were able to help pour a concrete pad, level it out so that they can build a storage room. And so now with all this work, they can do their ministry even better than what they have been. And so, team, you did an awesome job this week. The next picture you'll see is Pastor Allen. And so Pastor Allen is the pastor of this church, this local community. We formed a relationship over the past couple years, and you'll hear more about him later in the sermon, but he loves his people. He loves his community. Every day that we're working, he's out there working with us. He's not off in some room, staying cool in the AC that he's found. He's out there working so that the work can be done so that more and more people can hear about Jesus in a more comfortable way. It's all about Jesus to him. And he had this quote, and I shared a car ride with him, and he had this quote, and it ties directly into our passage, and he said this. And this was talking about the work that is still to be done. And on the next slide, you'll read, it says, "It would be a mistake of ours to only focus on ourselves when there are many communities where we can work." As you talk to Pastor Allen, you'll never hear him say, "Gosh, I need this. I am so, I'm in need. Help our church. Help." From our last youth group's missions trip, because of the work we did, he was able to inspire his church to raise more money and to do more projects on their own. He's not just sitting on his hands and feet and waiting for our team to get there and serve. His team, his community, he is leading his church to be more and more faithful to Jesus. And his heart and compassion that he has for his people is exactly what we see in our passage. You heard the word read where Jesus was moved and he sees the people and he has compassion. And so we see the story of Jesus feeds the 5,000. In verses 30 and 33, we see that Jesus and his disciples, they were beat from nonstop ministry. It opens up where they come back and they tell them all that they had seen, all that they had done in the name of Jesus, the miracles, the casting out of demons. They've reported all the work, but now they're tired. They're worn out. And Jesus sees this. Jesus feels this. And he's like, "Hey, let's get on the boat. We'll have a moment in the boat while we're going to a remote place. And once we get there, we can just rest. We can chill. We can take it easy. We can recover." And yet, what do we read in our story? Once they get over there, the people have met them. The crowds have gathered. And what we know is there's 5,000 men. Count the women and children. Scholars would say there's 15,000 to 20,000 people there. Wow, let's take a break, right? They step right into a place where they have to show up and be on again. And this is where we see the compassion of Jesus on display. Verse 34 reads this way. "When he went ashore, he saw a large crowd and had compassion on them, because they were like sheep without a shepherd. Then he began to teach them many things." His compassion moved him. When he saw the people in need, a people with no direction, a people who needed a shepherd, he met them right where they were, exhausted, worn down, hungry, yet moved with this guttural feeling, this guttural emotion of compassion. He stopped what he was doing and he ministered to them. And the same happens with you and me. Wherever we may find ourselves, God meets us there. He stops. He loves us. He sees us. He sees your story. He sees what your day-to-day is. He feels that with you, and he is there with you to support and to sustain, to have compassion for you. And all of that compassion is so that we could be with him and he with us. That's his whole mission, is to be with us. And now we aren't sure exactly what Jesus taught them that day, but by his actions and knowing what the story develops in, seeing teaching in larger aspects, we know by how our story unfolds is that he's fulfilling a lot of Old Testament scripture. Scholars, commentaries say he's fulfilling some Ezekiel passages. Psalm 23, I'm the shepherd that lies you beside green pastures. He's saying, I'm the better Moses. I'm coming to lead you. I'm coming to feed you. I'm coming to be with you. And so Jesus is doing a lot in this moment. And the cool thing about this story, the unique thing about this story is, other than the resurrection, it's the only story, it's the only miracle in all four Gospels. And so he really wants us to know this. He really wants us to see that he has compassion for us wherever we are, whatever our story looks like. He has compassion. 35 and 40, we see the disciples getting concerned at how late it's getting in the day. That's how long he was teaching. It's getting late in the day. Would you have sat there the whole time? Maybe, maybe not. But they're in a desolate place. Again, there's 15,000 people here, and the disciples are starting to get concerned. Hey, there's nowhere close to eat. We don't have the money to feed them. What are we going to do? We need to go get some stuff. We need to do what we can. And in John, it says that Jesus asked them this question. He already knows what he's going to do, but he tests them. He says, what are you going to do? How about you feed them? And he asks, what do they have? What do you have? Hey, disciples, what can you find? And we see that a little boy comes up, 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. Out of 15,000 people, all that they can find is this little boy who's willing to give up his 5 loaves of bread and his 2 fish. Looking outside of himself, looking at others, not knowing how it's going to help. And he gives it. And what does Jesus do? Verse 41 to 44 read this way. He took the 5 loaves and the 2 fish. Looking up to heaven, he blessed and broke the loaves. He kept giving them to his disciples to set before the people. He also divided the 2 fish among them all. Everyone ate and was satisfied. They picked up 12 baskets full of pieces of bread and fish. Now those who had eaten the loaves were 5,000 men. Jesus took what the little boy had to give. He didn't ask for more, he didn't ask for less. He just took what the little boy had to give and he multiplied it. 2 fish, 5 loaves feeds 15,000 people. With enough left over for the disciples to say, what lesson was Jesus trying to teach us here? And so look at what Jesus can do. He can take what we have to offer, no matter how much or how little, and he can do the extraordinary. He can do the impossible. He can do the unthought of things. The disciples who had just come off this ministry tour where there were miracles happening. They come back, they report all these miracles that had taken place through the power of this guy. And instead of going to him with this problem, Jesus has to teach them this lesson that whatever you bring to me, whatever you surrender from your life to me, I can do unthought of things. One more story from the mission trip, and then I'll close this out. But one of my favorite instances on the trip was this car ride with Pastor Allen. And looking forward, Mikey, who is our PPM leader, our ministry team leader, Pastor Allen and Scott Tinkle, we were in the car heading to go look at a future site for us to stay. So next year, we may not have a students' missions trip. We may say, hey, church, here's a missions opportunity. Who would like to come and join us? From the youngest to the oldest, families, whoever, hey, here's an opportunity. And we went to go look at this hotel that's about 40 minutes away. And instead of sleeping on a blow-up mattress on a muddy floor because you can't clean your feet off because there's all everywhere, there's no AC, instead of doing that, maybe we'll be able to have a place to go and rest each day. And so there's AC, there's hot and cold water, there's a pool. It's an awesome place. We want to make it more accessible for more people to serve. So we went to check this place, and on this car ride, as we started to ask Pastor Allen all these different questions of all sorts of things, you see that he has a huge vision for his church, an even bigger heart. And his vision goes, hey, in 2 years, we have a new community being developed right up the street. Now, we have no cars, and so people can't get to and from, even if they're 5 minutes away. It's hard for them to get here. But 250 new homes are being put back here. We're already building our discipleship program, training leaders to be ready, and having life groups in this community already, so that when the door opens for us to build a church, we're already there, and it's just now we have a place to meet. And so we're hearing this vision, we hear this heart for his people, and Scott asked Pastor Allen this one moment, he says, hey, Pastor Allen, what keeps you up at night? What is it that as a pastor, as a human, what is it that really keeps you up at night? And his response was this: so much to do, but not enough help. When I think of that, it steals my sleep, the church work and the personal stuff. So much to do, but not enough help. When I think of that, it steals my sleep time. And so when Pastor Allen, as the conversation continued, he turned and asked me, hey, what's your discipleship plan? What do y'all do as a church to raise disciples who raise disciples who raise disciples? It was really easy for me. I was able to talk about our preaching. I was able to talk about our life groups, our study groups, our kids. I was able to talk about a lot of stuff. And then I was sitting there in the backseat of the car, and I just looked, and I saw Scott there. And I said, Pastor Allen, really, just look at Scott here. And he met Scott last year, so he knows some of Scott's story because of our mission trip last year. I said, look, Scott, when he and his wife, Janet, came to our church about 5 years ago, they've just been getting more and more involved. They've been getting more and more involved. Scott helps on our connections team each and every Sunday. You see him at the front door every Sunday leading and welcoming people in because he sees the value. He sees what it means to welcome someone in well. He leads on our Alpha life group team, helping new believers with big questions process those big questions. I kept looking at Scott, and I was like, he was on our missions trip last year, and from that missions trip, he continued to step into our student ministry at least a couple times every month because he sees the value of mentoring those under him, those in a stage earlier than him. I said, really, Pastor Allen, what we're trying to do is just make a bunch of Scotts. Just a bunch of Scotts who, as they live in community, as they catch the vision of the church, as they see how faithful God has been to them, they turn it right around and give. They turn right around and surrender whatever they may have, whatever time they may have, whatever talent they may have, whatever treasure they may have, and say, I can give this. God, what can you do with it? It's yours. And Pastor Allen turned and he asked this question. He said, and again, it's being translated from Spanish, but he says, and what are we going to do when we have no more Scots? What are we going to do when the church has no more Scots? People don't want to commit. And to see all the work that's needed to be done, and all those things are getting heavier and heavier on the Scots. What are we going to do when there are no more Scotts? What are we going to do when there's no more Ashley Ballingers? One of the biggest guys in our church who serves on Connections. He serves in our kids ministry. He serves at Hope Repair. He serves at Feed the Sheep. He's everywhere. What are we going to do when there's no more Miss Adelaides in our church? Restrained to a walker. but serving at Kids Check-In because it's what she has to offer. With a heart to do more and more, but it's all she can do. What are we going to do when we don't have those people who tithe and give offerings to the local church and the mission of God faithfully, whether they have plenty or little? What are we going to do when people stop trusting Jesus and stop serving others with their time, their talent, and their treasures? What are we going to do? Whether you're at the church in Costa Rica, whether you're here, what are we going to do? This leads to our big idea today. Give and see what Jesus can do. Your time, your talent, your treasure, whatever you have to offer, God can do the unimaginable with it. Things that you've never thought of, He can take and multiply. He could do it without us if He wanted. He could just say it. I mean, He made everything we see by just speaking the words. He could do it without us if He wanted, but He doesn't. He chose the little boy with the fish and the bread, and He chooses you and I with whatever we may have. Whatever we come with, whatever we surrender. But the question is, though, do we trust Him? Or do we want to hold on to what we have? Our strengths, our weaknesses, what are we holding on to? What do we not trust Him with? Do we trust Him with our time enough to give Him all we have? Do we trust Him with our treasures to give Him all we have? Do we trust Him with our talents to give Him all we have? Or do we just give Him the portion we want to give? The portion that's comfortable. The portion that still lets us stay in control. Do you trust Him? So how do we apply this passage to our life? I think first off, you got to know that Jesus sees you. Jesus knows you. He knows your story. He knows every second you have. He knows all of your talents and gifts. He knows what treasures you have. He sees you. He knows you. And He's not asking you to give anything you don't have. But I do think He's calling you, and I do think He's calling me to reevaluate, what am I giving? Is it my all? Am I trusting Him with everything I have, or is there something I'm holding back? And then the simple application. After we know that God has this compassion for us, He sees us, He's not asking us to do any more than what He knows we have. After that, what do we do? I'm a guy of action. What do we do? And it's simple. I share this with kids a lot of times after missions trips, after big summer trips. It's really simple. I didn't come up with this. It's based on this dude named Shamgar in Judges, but it applies to this little boy here who right where he was just gave what he had. To say, hey, Jesus, what can you do? But it's simple. Start where you are. Use what you have. Do what you can. Start where you are. Use what you have. Do what you can. Love God and love our neighbor. Are you loving your neighbor? Start there. Literally, the person who lives beside you. Are you loving them? Are you serving them? Do you know their name? Start where you are. Here at One Fellowship, we have kids ministry, students ministry, connections, worship and production, hope repair, feed the sheep, events team, meals team, and there's all sorts of ways to serve in these. Some require more time, some require less time. Some are systematic, some are, hey, here's an event this week. There's a lot of places, if you haven't served, there's a lot of places to get involved and to say, hey, here's where I am. I'm not there, I'm here. How can I serve? There's many of other ways in life. Where are you? Use what you have. Again, God's not asking you to give or do with what you don't have. He's just saying, give me what you have and watch what I can do. your time, your talent, your treasure? Does anything need to be restructured? Do what you can. Take action. Stop sitting in the seat. Stop standing on the sideline. Get in the game. When we fully surrender to Christ, here's what we find, and this is verse 42. Everyone ate and was satisfied. Everyone ate and was satisfied. Give and see what Jesus can do. Father, we thank you so much for your word. We thank you so much for your heart, for your people. It's not that you want us to give what we have because you want to take something from us. It's because you want to give to us and to everyone. And so, God, I pray that you would stir in our hearts, each and every one of us, from the pastors to the first timer. Hey, God, where are you stirring in me? What have I not fully given to you? Because, God, I really want to see what you're going to do. I really want to see what you can do. So, Jesus, we give you all we have. Would you do the unimaginable? In Jesus' name.